Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is a follow-up video from the video I posted last week. Last week I posted a video with a question: does the shaper tape have to be coplanar to your shaper? Turns out that a lot of people had follow-up questions. And so I decided I will do some follow-up experimentation, and this is the video. If I summarize the questions that I got on the video, there were three main types of questions. One, I only tested if the size of the objects are the same. What about location? Does the shaper tape and the different planes impact location? So if you put your objects on a workpiece, would they be in different locations depending on where the shaper tape is? So that's the first set of questions. The second set of questions was around the shaper tape itself. People said, well, you only tested the case where the shaper tape was parallel to a camera. What if you would have an angle? Is the effect the same? Does it still not matter? Or does that impact the way you cut? And then the third set of questions was around the scanning process. People said, well, you scanned and then you elevated the cut zone. What if you would scan with the elevated cut zone? And that's an important question, because the idea of you having a table with all the shaper tape in front, you put the workpiece on and you scan, would actually mean that you're scanning with an elevated shaper origin. And that is not what I did in the experiments. To test this first question, what I did is to create a file with two squares. And I first scanned everything coplanar. I cut the first square, and then I elevated the entire workpiece by 7 centimeters, and I cut the second square. And the idea would be that if there is an impact on the location, then these squares should not align. They should not be aligned to each other as they were in the file. Because it impacts the location. So either it should be some kind of like larger, smaller, or in an angle or something like that if there is an impact. And as you can see on this picture, there is no substantial impact when it comes to location, at least not in this case where like both objects are pretty close to each other. So the answer to this question is that at least for things that are close together, I wasn't able to find a substantial impact when you elevate the cut zone. The second set of questions was around the location of your shaper tape. So does it have an impact if your shaper tape is parallel to your shaper? So if this is your shaper here, right, you cut and the camera looks at the shaper tape. Or if you have an angle and your shaper origin is twisted, like turned, then does that impact how things are cut? So here I scanned again the workpiece, and then I cut a square with the coplanar workpiece. But I did that with a turned shaper origin. So you see here that I gave it about a 45-degree angle, and so now the camera sees the shaper tape with an angle. Then I elevated the entire workpiece by 7 centimeters, and I cut the second square that is completely aligned to the first one, again with angle about 45 degrees. And what you see here is that this square lies a little bit, maybe half a millimeter. It's not even a millimeter or max, a millimeter max, higher than the one that was coplanar. That effect is minimal, but it is there. You have now, if you are planning to cut with an elevated surface, you do need to think how the domino tape lays. Or to put it another way, you have to think if location matters, because what you see here is that the size of the squares is actually the same. So there's no impact on the size, it's 8 by 8 centimeters, but the location. So if you cut something where the location doesn't matter, you can totally be elevated. But if you're cutting something where the location is of importance, you might not want to use that technique. The third question was around the scanning process. Does it matter if you scan your ShaperTape with a coplanar shaper origin and then elevate the workpiece, or can you actually scan on the elevated workpiece? So what I did here is to first scan everything and cut it coplanar, again a square, and then I did a second version where I elevated the cut zone by 7 centimeters and I did the scan. And I placed again an 8x8 square. The first thing I noticed when placing this square the second time with the elevated scan is that my square looked smaller than the scan of the workpiece. Shaper scanned domino and recognized the size and somehow distorted the size of the workpiece. So suddenly the square I had already cut looked larger than the square I was trying to place. And so I was like, oh, that looks dangerous. That doesn't look good. I cannot imagine this to have a good result. So I placed the square more or less where I thought it should be, because now I wasn't able to really align it well because the one I cut already was looking larger. I placed it, and then with the elevated workpiece, I did cut again a square. And so now the result, as you see here, looks totally off. Again, the size seems to be the same, but you see it is at a different location. Now, of course, I wasn't able to place it well because in the scan, what I had already cut looked larger than the second one that was of the same size. So obviously, if I would have known how to place it, it might have been aligned, but I wasn't able to place it well because it was distorted. And so my conclusion here is that the scan of your workpiece gets distorted because somehow the shaper origin knows the size that normally the ShaperTape has, and because you're elevated, that size is different, and it does some kind of extrapolation, and that blows up your workpiece scan, the photo of your workpiece. So the relation won't work anymore. So what does that mean? I think it's the better way to go for you to scan first the ShaperTape and then elevate your workpiece if that is necessary. If you have a workpiece where the location again doesn't matter exactly because you're cutting something out, you can also do the elevated scan, but know that somehow your workpiece will look distorted. The photo of your workpiece will look distorted in relation to the object you're placing. And that doesn't sound that appealing to me. Going back to the question, can you create a work table where you have all your ShaperTape at the back and then you just put the workpiece on there and you scan it and you cut? I think we have to be more careful here if you're planning to scan on the elevated workpiece, right? If you're not planning to do that, for instance, on the workstation, right, you can totally scan when it's coplanar and then elevate it if you want it, for instance, then you can do that. The other thing is that obviously how high you elevate your workpiece has an impact on that too, right? If it's just a couple millimeters, there might not be a huge effect of how this gets distorted, but I elevated it 7 centimeters, which is a lot. So that's more than 2 inches, so about 2.5 inches. And so that is obviously a larger distortion that happens there. All right, that was the follow-up video about this question. And it was all based on your questions, and I love them. Keep them coming. You see that the collective brain power that we have can help us understand these different things a lot better than if I think about these things myself. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, to subscribe to my channel so you can watch more Shaper Origin videos, and I hope to see you around.